Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hey everyone, I'm Susan Kaufman and you're listening to Attitude Magazine's ADHD Experts Audio. Today's topic is an extremely timely one. It's how to get things done, especially accomplishing our long-term goals. We all set priorities for each new year. We write out goals like we're going to learn to play the piano or learn a foreign language, or maybe we just want to get done the things that we want to get done each week. But somehow we forget what we'd intended to do. We lose our lists. We're not sure how to break up a big task, and, time just passes before we know it. Our guest today is Judith Kolberg. She is a professional organizer, a speaker, and author, but I have to say that she is unique in recognizing the challenges of people with executive function disorders. Her book, ADHD Friendly Ways to Organize Your Life, is, I think, one of the first books that really focused on the chronically disorganized. And I urge you to take a look at it and to visit her website, www.fileheads.net. Judith, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I so appreciate that introduction. It's said that Julius Caesar started the tradition of making resolutions on January 1st to honor the Roman mythical god Janus. Janus has two faces, one that allowed him to look back into the past year and forward into the new year. So the new year has come to represent a time for a fresh start, for a clean slate. It also, somewhat seductively, lays out what we think is a whole year in front of us to carry out our goals and our resolutions, and also gives us enough time to get back on the horse if we fall off the resolution horse. Let's say you resolve to get organized in 2015. Could be you got off to a good start. Maybe you downloaded a productivity app that keeps your calendar and tasks all in one place, or maybe you cleaned off the top of your desk, or perhaps you deleted all those old emails. But chances are your original resolve has dissolved. In fact, only 14% of Americans succeed in keeping their resolutions past, guess which date? That's right, February 10th. So we're right on cue. Now, I don't have statistics on ADDers' particular success with resolutions, but I'm sure of this. Getting organized is a behavior modification resolution, and that's always tough for anybody. But behavior modification resolutions, whether it's getting organized or anything else, can be particularly tough on ADDers. Here's why. Low frustration level, chemically and emotionally. It's been proving that ADDers can be discouraged sooner than non-ADDers. So hanging in there might be undermined by years of other people criticizing you, or by a tendency to kick yourself, what we call self-blame, when at first you don't succeed. I see this all the time with my ADD clients in January and February. My ADD client Mark says, I went shopping for a tablet, but I ended up pissed off at the salesman in no time at all. I'm frustrated easily. I research the best prices using my shopping app, but there's always a little gotcha. I just spend a lot of my time just plain frustrated. Well, Mark's fuse is a bit shorter than non-ADDers, and so what we did was, just as an example, we worked on a checklist, a short one, for what he wanted out of a tablet. And we did a lot of pre-shopping online, and then we did the magic. We limited the choices down to 2 or 3, really important. And then we went to the store, and he took one of those 3 models, the names of the 3 models with him, and he went with his nephew, who's 22 and tech savvy, and that was very productive, because nothing will undermine productivity more than frustration. Literally, the stress hormones stop the brain from being able to think straight. So sometimes if you understand a low frustration level can be a part of your ADD and it's not a personal failing, and you account for that, that can help you get through. Checklists and limiting choices are always a help with situations that involve decision-making. Another reason resolve dissolves is that ADDers often can't always call up from their memories what they've already learned. For instance, in an organizing session with Alice, I taught her how to plan for big complex projects and how to plan for little bitty one-step tasks, two really different things. But in the next organizing session we did, she said she forgot. Well, it's not exactly forgetting. It's her ADD brain that makes it hard for her to recover this kind of learning information readily. It's always a good idea to pull out notes or do self-talk with anything that involves a process, which, by the way, many organizing situations involve a process. Recently, I created flashcards to help my ADD clients remember the process of getting rid of stuff. So let me share with you Alice's self-talk. It went something like this. Okay, I'm working on my schedule now. What do I know about this? Oh yeah, now I remember. Break those big projects down into smaller pieces and write down and schedule tasks, however tiny they may be. Self-talk is out loud, by the way. It's not in your head. You don't talk to yourself in your head. And then there's old reliable distractions and impulsivity that can undermine anybody's resolve. Hank's New Year's resolution is to get his car back into his garage. He lives in Boston, a very snowy place and a very cluttered garage. He said, I scoped out a whole weekend to work on it. This was before the snow, by the way. Man, did I underestimate that. I left out the time sopped up by impulsively running off to the hardware store to get some great garage gizmos and gadgets, and the distraction of stopping and oiling all my power tools. Of course, then we had the ice storm and the snowstorm, and there's my car at the curb, I think, covered up with snow. So what can you do to get back on the resolution horse when it seems your resolve has dissolved? This time, go back and check if your resolution is consistent with your lifestyle. I mean, so many times ADDers make resolutions that are really different from their personalities, let alone different from their strengths and weaknesses. For instance, my ADD client David resolved to read and process his email every day, right? He gets 35 emails by lunchtime and over 100 a day. He reads really slowly. He types even slower. And his email responses are long and comprehensive, covering every point and contingency in every way possible. That's who he is. It's not going to change. Plus, he's highly distractible, so while he's reading his email, David takes every phone call. He responds to all the text messages, and he never met a tweet he didn't like. It's just not his style to sit down for hours on end exclusively focusing on reading and responding to email. So making resolutions that are way outside your personality or lifestyle are doomed to fail, ADD or not. So David and I took a breather and we tried to figure out how to align this resolution more with who he is and how he actually works. And so he continues to take calls and texts on the run, and he tweets like crazy, but after 5 o'clock. And he checks his email every hour. Not perfect, but the best we can negotiate. You've got to align your resolutions in some accord with who you are fundamentally. That's the first thing. This time, give yourself time. Modifying behavior is really hard work. Why would you be able to change in a month what you've been doing a certain way for 10 years or 20 years or all your life? Behavior modification is a big deal with the potential impact to change your entire life, so give it the respect it deserves by allowing yourself time to make these important changes. People who are successful at making New Year's resolutions that last the whole year say it took about 3 to 5 months for that behavior modification to solidify. And by the way, there's nothing that says you have to make a resolution on January 1st. If another time of the year represents a fresh start to you, to make an annual commitment, go with that. I have a client who makes her resolutions on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. Your birthday might be a better annual occasion to kick off a resolution. And if your resolution involves your spouse, well, an anniversary date might hold more meaning, give you more motivation. This time, break it down. Breaking down things is a tried and true tactic for modifying behavior. In fact, the word resolution comes from the Latin verb solvere, which means to break down. So you remember Mark and the snowstorm in the garage in Boston? Well, he and I broke down that garage project. One weekend, we just cleared out excess stuff, did all the recycling, got the bad stuff out of there. Next weekend, we assembled new shelving and new pegboards. And a few weeknights we dedicated to just those smaller special projects inside the garage, because every big project spawns little projects. So each night, one night we just oiled tools, another night he just fixed the bicycle, another night he put all the tools up on the pegboard, that kind of micro task that very well could take him off the big picture of organizing the garage. Took Mark and I the equivalent of 7 days to break down the garage project instead of the 2 or 3 that Mark had projected. But the car is parked in the garage. Yay. So here's a quick exercise. You can start now if you want and complete when you get off the call. Just turn the handout over. Write a really broad behavior modification resolution at the top. Lose weight, quit smoking, whatever. At the top of the page, get organized. And down below it, just write 1, 2, 3. Just write in 3 steps that break down the goal into smaller steps, just to get you started, okay? It's not going to cover everything, because getting started, after all, initiation, is always an ADD challenge. This time, get more support. Every resolution or goal that involves behavior modification is best accomplished with somebody. Tell someone you're quitting smoking or you're dieting, and they can help you stay accountable. They can boost your morale, maybe even do it with you for added support. Well, the same thing is true for getting organized and every behavior modification goal. Here's a great quote. Sari Solden, Women and ADD, says, expand your idea of organizational help to include other people to help you. You need to get over the obsession with being, quote, an organized person, or trying to, quote, keep it together in the same way non-ADD people do. A disorder, after all, means something is not of average difficulty for you, and you might need a higher level of organizational support than other people. Support might just mean another set of hands, or someone else there to keep your morale up, or someone with the expertise you don't have, like how to buy a tablet. There's so many other ways to get support now. You can join a meetup group. You can join an online support group. You can join a live support group. You can find a coach. I'm telling you, ADD Magazine, by the way, is an excellent resource for support groups and coaches. And I hope you'll consider hiring a professional organizer if you really need somebody to help you through a behavior modification goal. You can get one at www.challengingdisorganization.com. It's on your resource page. Or maybe the kind of support you need is what we call a body double. Years ago, an ADHD woman diagnosed at 62 called me from Savannah, Georgia. She called me when she was 70. She said, my husband and I used to think all this stuff around here were treasures, but now it's just junk. There were lots of papers on her desk and files all over the place in her cluttered office. And when I arrived, she said to me, here, sit down beside me, which I did. I sat down next to her at her desk. And while I sat there, she was opening accumulated mail and paying bills, and filing and shredding and tossing things out. And I'm sitting there quite quietly, not offering any organizing help, not even any organizing advice. I'm doing little under-the-radar things like slitting open envelopes with a beautiful silver letter opener and alphabetizing her business cards. And an hour passes. I'm doing all these little passive things, and she's running around like a nut on I don't know what, getting organized. She said to me after an hour, you're a good organizer. Here's $60. I thought, what was that? I had no idea what this dynamic was, and I learned from a colleague of mine named Linda Anderson, who's an ADD coach, that this is a very special kind of support. It's called body doubling. Body doubling it's passive and it's non-obtrusive. A body double kind of serves as an anchor, anchoring your client or you to an organizing task. And a body double can also serve as sort of a mirror, mirroring behavior. This is me sitting with my body double. We're organizing my desk now. Body doubling is great for ADDers, especially for boring activities, which many organizing tasks are. I make a big apology to my industry, but it's true. Like purging emails, or organizing your desk, doing your taxes, or filling out forms. You need a body double. I tell my clients who are parents of children with ADD to just be a body double in the room with them when they do their homework. Don't help them with the homework, not unless they really need it. Just sit and work at your computer or read a book in the background, unobtrusive. Be a passive anchor, anchoring your kids to their homework. A client once told me she has her dog sit in the room with her ADD child who struggles with reading. With the dog in the room passively snoozing away, the child seems to focus better on the reading. And turn your handout over again. On the reverse of the handout, write down the name of someone you can ask to be a body double. They have to be passive. They have to be supportive. They have to be compassionate. You can find out more about body doubling in the book, ADD-Friendly Ways to Organize Your Life, or Conquering Chronic Disorganization. Both the books have it, and they're available hard copy, downloadable PDF, Kindle, Nook, so on and so forth. Now this time around, with your behavior modification resolution, try using a little bit more technology, just as much as you can easily manage. There's an app, for instance, called Priority Matrix that can help you break down a project. There's an app for scheduling tasks with reminders and alarms that go off. There's apps for note-taking, for recording and playing back self-talk or affirmations. Meetup has an app. Attitude Magazine has an app. There are apps for taking medication, for reminding you what to eat, for eating healthy meals, for routines for getting to bed. Apps, apps, apps. YouTube videos can show you how to organize anything. You can see it visually, right? Everything from a 10,000 square foot house to the junk drawer in your kitchen and all your digital stuff as well. If you're an audio learner, podcasts are amazing. You can go to iTunes and search keywords, and there's free content everywhere. Tap into your Facebook friends for recommendations about ADD resources like great calendars to use. Should I use a hard copy one? Should I use a web-based one? Should I use ask them. They'll tell you. Consult with your LinkedIn network about finding a coach. Chances are you already have a supportive online community. I'm just saying, use it. This time, Resolve to support your brain. Feed and water your brain. First of all, of course, you have to get your meds right, okay? And then for ADDers to sustain the hard work of keeping up your resolve, staying focused, fighting off distractions, of not getting frustrated, all that stuff is pretty mentally exhausting. You need to feed and water your brain more consciously than non-ADDers do. I tell my ADD clients, I want you to eat the whole time that we're in the organizing session, or as much as possible. I mean, there isn't a diet that prevents ADD, but we know that the wrong diet can worsen ADD symptoms. I tell them, keep your serotonin level up, with these great nibblers, blueberries and apples and sweet potatoes, and thank God, very good dark chocolate. I often bring it with me. Dopamine helps focus, and small amounts of protein can boost dopamine. So little chunks of chicken or little rolled slices of turkey or walnuts, protein drinks, avocados are good too. But here's the thing, you got to cut them up, put them in baggies, and have them handy all the time. If they're not handy, you won't have them and you won't eat them. And water. What can I say? Water. There's so much more evidence linking ADD and obesity, and every single weight maintenance and reduction plan includes drinking more water. But can I just say something here? Frankly, I'm a little sick of water. I'm a little sick of water. So I want to give you some advice for making water more palatable, or as we say in New York, water more palatable. A cinnamon stick or a splash of low-sugar juice. Buy what do they call it? A fruit infuser. I mean, if you Google water bottle infuser, you can add orange slices down in this little compartment in the middle of your water bottle, or mint or lemon to your water. I have a client who puts flavored ice cubes in her water. They're made out of coffee, and I think that might be cheating a little bit around the caffeine, but you can puree raspberries and make ice cubes, and pineapple. And here's one I heard recently, somebody who puts hot pepper sauce in their water, and it helps to enhance appetite control, and it gets some of those hormones moving again. So if you did nothing else but you resolved to improve your meds, your food, water, and exercise, you'd make a world of difference with your ADD. Everyone else probably criticizes you. Don't pile on self-criticism. I mean, if something goes wrong, you're an adult. Let's do this. Let's figure out what went right and what went wrong, and let's make adjustments. Was your resolution way too unrealistic? Did you not break it down? Was it incompatible with your lifestyle? Did you try too hard to go it alone? Take the time to step back and figure out what went right, what went wrong. Remember, failure is usually short-term and temporary. Stay in it for the long term. It may take 3 months to solidify a behavior modification goal. People who quit smoking report quitting 6 times before they actually quit. But each time they learn something a little bit new about quitting smoking. I remember when I stopped smoking, I learned that I could not go to a bar, because if I went to a bar, I associated drinking with smoking. Couldn't do that. Of course, this was a long time ago when I used to go to bars. I learned that I couldn't be on the telephone. We used to call them telephones in those days, because I couldn't carry on a conversation without a cigarette in my hand. I learned something each time I messed up until I finally stopped. Take joy even in the smallest progress towards your goal. My experience is that adult ADDers are kind of split on the issue of rewards, but if you respond to rewards, my goodness, please do that for yourself. Other people's ADDers see no value at all in the reward system, but I leave that up to you. I'd actually love to hear your views on rewards. So just a couple of words about some of the resources that are available to you. I mean, ADD Magazine is really terrific. If you want to order some of my products, they're at squallpress.net. You can reach me at fileheads. ChallengingDisorganization.com is where you can find an ADD organizing specialist. And ADD Connect is a pretty good site for finding an ADD coach. So let's take some questions. You can ask questions about, behavior modification, resolution making, or getting back on the horse, or even about getting organized.
Thanks so much, Judith. That was really helpful. I guess at this time of year, one of the things that people are thinking about are very big goals. So here's someone who says, Angie, who says, how do you tackle a multi-year goal? Learn to play the piano, speak a new foreign language. I mean, something, that's really a life goal. How do you focus on something like that?
Well, we talked about this concept of breaking things down, but I want to add just kind of another layer to it. So what I would do there is I would set some interim goals for learning how to play the piano, for instance, and I would also add on to those goals that it be quantitative. So like in the first 6 months of going towards this goal, I will learn to read music by sight, and that will take 6 months. In the next 3 months, I will find someone who I can practice with. And I will practice, I'm going to dedicate myself to practicing 2 hours a week. So you set the interim goals over a long scope of period, but you make those goals really measurable, quantitative, so you know where you stand with those interim goals. I think that that's going to help you.
That's a great suggestion. And I guess quantify and break down is a key right, to, Okay.
Especially those big, long goals, sure.
Right. Here's I don't know if this is a crazy question or not, but here's something that comes up a lot, and there are many people who have posted about this today. People say that they come up with goals or they make to-do lists, but they don't remember to look at them, or they can't. There are a lot of memory issues. I can't remember that I set those goals. I mean, to what degree is memory an issue in terms of achieving goals?
Well, there's two kinds of memory that ADDers have a weakness in, and one of those is called prospective memory, remembering to remember when you need to remember it. So you have, let's say, a library book that you need to return to the public library. So you need to remember to put it in the car and remember to bring it into the library just as you're passing by the library in your car. And that's called prospective memory. It's memory for future events. And that's, there's a lot of research that ADDs have a little trouble with prospective memory. And the other kind of memory that we have a little trouble with, not we because I don't have ADD, but the global we, is this thing called working memory, which is that sort of scratch pad memory, where you want to put something down in your memory to retrieve in a very short amount of time so that you can use it again. Like my client was reading a book and went to the index of the book and looked up the word distractibility, and there were 3 entries, page 11, page 51, page 17. So she goes to page 11 and reads the little paragraph on distractibility, forgets the other 2 pages, has to go back to the index, look up the word again. Distractibility, find the other 2 entries, go and look up the second entry, she forgets what page the 3rd entry. Very kind of typical, holding that little bit of information in your working memory to use right away. It could be a phone number, it could be a website address, something instructional, a process, very common for ADDers. So here's something that we know, is that the nice thing about the digital era that we live in is that there's dozens of ways to, quote, write it down so that you can remember it. And I don't just mean literally writing it down with a pen on a piece of paper anymore, although I can tell you that if you meet an adult who has ink on their hand, they are no doubt ADD. But the other ways that you can capture and remember things are multiple. You can leave yourself a message on your voicemail. You can Download digital Post-it notes that will pop up on your screen on your computer. You can use, obviously, tangible Post-it notes all over the house. You can use a reminder app that will send you a text message to remind you about things. You can use an audio app that will send you an audio reminder, which will talk over your cell phone, take your meds or whatever. There are all kinds of alarms and ways to get reminded about things that are sort of a prosthetic, if you will, for your memory that, abound. And I think that once you start playing with these things, they're actually kind of a lot of fun to explore all the ways that you can be reminded of stuff.
Judith, you mentioned apps several times, and do you have a short list of ones that you specifically like that you would recommend? Or do you think it's individual?
Your magazine just did a terrific article on
we did 40-some apps, right? Yeah,
productivity apps for ADHDers. And there's also a class that the Institute for Challenging Disorganization just put on with a similar title called Productivity Apps for ADHD. And for $39, you can take that class. And again, you have the website on your resource page, but I'll mention one or two. And productivity apps, by the way, what I mean by that is those kinds of apps that sort of combine your task list, your to-do list with your calendar and your goals, and sort of gives you one place to sort of jive that all together. Some of them do a better job of this than others. One that my clients over and over keep telling me about in terms of productivity is something that's, I think it's fairly new. I haven't even used it myself yet. It's called Zenday, Zenday. And it's an app that merges your calendar with your tasks in a 3D, oh my God, user interface, right? Which helps you visualize your whole day. It's really very kind of cool, a little bit difficult to describe, on air like this, but you might want to check that out. Email, I just want to recommend unroll.me, UNROLL.me, Unroll Me, which is one of these email things that searches through your entire email and gathers up sort of these low-level emails like, newsletters and listservs and promos and solicitations and charitable requests and all this stuff, and packages it up into one roll and sends you a request about whether you want to even look at them or not, or whether you'd like to delete them. Okay, what else we got?
From Suzanne, she says, if you have 3 main tasks you want to accomplish in a given week, how do you recommend breaking those down? Do you do one a day, or do you do a little bit each day? Or, I think the challenge of breaking things down in manageable bites is it's tough for many of us to figure out how to break the things down.
Excuse me. Well, I think the first thing you want to do is differentiate a project from a task. So if it's just a one-step action, like make a call or send an email or something like that, you can knock those off throughout the entire day. The harder stuff is the one where it's like a little mini project. Like you have to buy a birthday present, get a card, wrap the gift, get it to the party, blah, blah, blah. Those are the ones that you want to try and knock off with a little bit of progress every day. Progress really counts a lot towards mini tasks or big complex projects, not the one-steppers, but the ones in between and the big ones. You want to do something towards it every day, and I think you'll find that will work.
That's a great suggestion. Here's a question that's interesting. From Catherine, she says, do you think it's actually possible to develop strong organizational skills if you haven't had them at all now in midlife?
I think that it's all about compensation in a lot of ways rather than necessarily developing new skills. But I think you still have to be accountable for things like paying your bills and getting places on time and, doing your taxes and all that kind of organizational stuff that we have to do every day. You're not absolved of that just because you're not good at it. So I don't think it's a great idea to try to be who you're not and cultivate skills you're never going to have. But I do think you're still accountable for getting those things done. Somebody has to do them. So either you delegate those, you pay someone to do them for you, you do a trade out, you figure out some way for them to be accomplished, or you find a compensatory strategy for getting things done that compensates for your lack of skills. But, this would be different advice than I would give children, but this is the advice that I give adults with ADD. You still got to pull it off.
Right. That's interesting. So work within your skill set. Don't suggest that you're going to suddenly transform yourself into something you've never been before. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's true. And there's lots and lots of ways to find, when I work with ADDers, they're like, what was that book with Mark Twain and the kid who painted the fence?
Huckleberry Finn.
Huckleberry Finn. They're like the best people to recruit other people to do things for them that they can't do themselves. They're really miraculous at it. And they're fair, and all that. But I think, if you discover that it's not ever going to be something you're good at, find somebody who's good at it.
Right. Makes sense. There's a question here about priority setting. A couple of people say that everything seems equally important, so they find it really difficult to set priorities and decide, what should be. And of course, that's the very definition of ADHD, right? That you're not importance. You don't function on the basis of importance. You function on the basis of what's interesting. So, do you have suggestions for people in terms of how to prioritize? It is challenging, I think. It
is challenging. It's very challenging. I think you need to go with emotions when it comes a lot to prioritizing. So if things feel like they're sort of equal, one of the things you might want to do is do the thing that gets somebody off your back, or do something that will please another person who's really wanted you to do this, whatever it was, for a long time, or do the thing that worries you the most. Go emotional on it rather than left brain logical.
Right.
The matrix, the important versus the urgent. There's merit to all that shit. There really is a lot of merit to that stuff. I don't mean to, but for ADD,
but you're saying just go with the thing that you really know intuitively is just bugging you that it's not done.
Yeah, because it's just going to hold the other stuff back anyway.
Right. That's inspired, actually. Here's a good one for you. Their goal is to stop being chronically late. She says it drives everyone in my life crazy and it's tremendously demoralizing. And of course we hear that so frequently, right, from people with ADHD. It's just a really tough one.
It really is. It's one of those behavior modification things that's really hard to turn around. There's lots and lots of suggestions on chronic lateness. One is often, set your clock ahead or set your clock behind or whatever it is. I have a little bit of dyslexia, so I can't quite figure that out. But you're too smart to have your watch outwit you. You know what time it is. So I don't think that usually works with ADDers. I think one of the more potent things about conquering chronic lateness is just being a little bit more conscious of your buffers. You're going to forget something and have to go back to the house. You know this about yourself. You don't have gas in the car. You're going to have to stop and get gas. Or that, there's going to be a traffic tie-up because you're leaving at rush hour and now you're rushing instead of leaving before, whatever. So those kinds of buffers in between. So just use a really simple formula for yourself. If you have to get somewhere, just add a half an hour onto it. That's all. Just figure out a formula that works, especially for things that you're routinely late for, because you know that these things are, what's the worst that's going to happen is you're going to get there on time.
Well, that's a dread thought for many of us with ADHD. Getting there early and having nothing to do, that's kind of a nightmare,
Well, yeah, and I love that you brought that up, because sometimes I think it's really important to sit back and figure out what you get out of being late.
Right.
Okay, because I'm not, I don't want to go like full Zen or something on this, but there is something in it for you at this age with this level of insight that you already have about being late. You really have to come to terms with what do you get out of it, and is what do you get out of it worth what you're doing to yourself and other people. I mean, you're right, one of the things that ADDers often get out of it is jet propulsion, for one thing. You know, when they are late, they move faster.
Right.
The other thing that they often get out of it is that this fear that if they get there early, that they're, don't quite know what to do with themselves. So have something to do with yourself. Now we have these smartphones, and I think that they've really helped people who can't stand idle time or who get bored easily. I mean, obviously everything can be done too much in excess. I get that. But it's also a way to absorb a little bit of time that you might have that for whatever reason you didn't feel like you wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interestingly, as soon as I brought up correcting lateness, someone posted, but what about getting there early and having to wait an hour? But Lynn helpfully says that she corrected lateness by focusing on the departure time. Then setting, goals, setting sort of alarms so that you would get off the computer or the phone. Of course, that's the key to getting yourself out the door.
Especially on the internet. I mean, because that's a real hyper-focused trap.
And Judith raises an interesting question in as far as this discussion. She says, the time just seems to disappear magically. How do I stay conscious that time is passing? I know that's a crazy question, and yet it's not. It's time. Being aware of time passing is a classic ADHD problem, right? I mean, and one of the things you can do is, change out your watch. If you have a watch that doesn't have a face on, and an analog watch is often better for ADDers than a digital watch, because you can actually see the passage of time with an analog watch, and you can calculate a little bit better how much time you have left to do something, or how much time before the show starts, or whatever, with an analog watch. With a digital one, you're just seeing a little snapshot of what the time is, but you have no frame of reference about time. So that's a good thing. And I like, I don't know how many hundreds of people are on the call, but I'm sure some of them already know about Time Timer, which is the graphical interface on a watch or a clock, which not only shows the passage of time, but actually has sort of a red, interface that shows as the hand sweeps. So it changes color, and you can actually see in a very visual way the passage of time, and that helps get people more conscious about time. Yeah, Time Timer is great, and they have a wonderful app now that it just does what you put on your screen, just as you say. And Deb has just posted regarding time. She just installed a visual timer on her computer.
Yeah.
Her recommendation in Attitude Magazine. Great.
There you go.
So that could
they can be a little scary. I mean, I had one in front of me while I was a speaker in an audience. I had this big audience in front of me, and I had to speak, and they had a time timer like right on the lectern.
Ooh.
I felt terrorized by the damn thing. It was really intimidating to know I only had 20 seconds left and whatever. Anyway, I guess all these things can have a double face to them.
Beth has just posted something interesting. She said she found a watch with vibrating alarms that she set to vibrate every hour, specifically in order to be aware of time passing. So that's interesting. It's sort of a training mechanism to sort of remind yourself that time is passing. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I think that is good. I mean, some things that are, visual or tactile can really bring you back. I think there was something I read recently in a blog post about this ADDer who puts just a small piece of Velcro by his computer, and when he's working on it, he kind of puts the scratchy side up. Whenever he's drifting off on the internet, he just sort of scratches the Velcro, and it helps him get back again.
Interesting.
Out of the hyper-focus.
Tactile. Right.
Stuff that's tactile, stuff that's visual. I have a client who, has a dog barking alarm. People use different things to cue them.
Yes, interesting. Here's a question about motivation. The person says, I can set the goals, but somehow my motivation just disappears. And you know how when you decide you're going to do something, you can do it, but getting yourself to make that decision is half the battle. And sort of an analogous question, which has been posted here, is how to get started. Getting started, which I think is always a challenge.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, getting started, which some people call motivation, some people call initiation, is really different than sustaining it, over the long haul and then wrapping up at the end. Those are really three different things that ADDers struggle a lot with. Search for motivation in something beside yourself. Sometimes you can get motivated if it's attached to a bigger goal, like it's altruistic or you're pleasing somebody else, or, you'll give a donation to a charity if you reach your weight loss goal. Make the motivation not just personal, if you possibly can, because I think sometimes people look inside of them for that kind of motivation, and it's lacking for some reason. I'm not quite sure what it is, but you need to sort of have more at stake, buff things up a little bit. Do it for other people. Make a promise to someone else is a great motivator for a lot of ADDers.
That's interesting. Just going back to the chronically late suggestion and a little bit like external motivation, Wendy posted that what worked for her was putting a Post-it note on the mirror that states that it was selfish and to be late, and it wasn't it wasn't nice to the people she was with.
No, it's very rude.
Definitely worked.
Very rude.
It should work for her. So
yeah,
and that's the sort of outside yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it can, other people experience it as rude and inconsiderate, and, if that helps motivate you, then go for it.
Right. And here's another solution. I solve my lateness problem by making an appointment with myself before the appointment. And I tell myself if I get there half an hour early, I can go to Starbucks. So that's a reward strategy. Yeah, that's a good one. Yep.
Yeah, I love that one. That's really great. Really Appointments with yourself are something all of us forget to do. We make appointments to, for our boss, for our kids, for our family, for the community, for our volunteer work, but we very rarely make appointments with ourselves. To do an organizing chore, for instance, finally sit down and do that to-do list or fill out your calendar or whatever. You can make appointments with yourself with the integrity of a high-level meeting with your boss. So if someone says, I need this, Mom, or whatever, when you have your appointment with yourself, you have to say, no, I've got an appointment. Not so easy, but that's really important stuff to do.
Yep. Deborah's asking if you could explain a bit further about dopamine and serotonin levels and how they are affected by diet and how they trigger the inability to stay on task.
No, I really can't. You know why? I mean, I know the basics of it, but there are two reasons why I hesitate. One is because I'm not trained in pharmaceuticals and all that prescription stuff and the whole, medical model of ADD, and so I really hesitate not to, but there are some great articles on this that are very, very easy to read. Some of them are in the ADD magazine archives. And so I just recommend that you do that. There is some also, I just really want to defer on that.
That's fine. Not a problem. Yeah, I think that's a hard one to pin down. Nick has asked something interesting. He wants to establish... He's looking for your help in how to establish good habits for communicating with his wife. So, for example, it's very hard for him to consistently remember to ask how her day was, to just do simple communication. And I think, it's an interesting, there's not very many people who will admit to that, and yet I think it's not an uncommon problem.
Yeah, this has got a lot of layers on it. The men are from Mars and women are from Venus thing, and, how couples communicate, and then there's the whole ADD men and women and their marriages and so forth and so on. There's just nothing more important than the communication. Even a lousy communication is better than no communication. I think that a lot of times I coach my ADD clients to always start with the word I when they're communicating with their spouse or another person, so that they claim the feeling or the thought or the idea or the complaint and not the word you. That's a big beginning, is to sort of claim your stake on whatever it is that you want to say with the word I, rather than it starting out with an accusatory kind of a you. And that's one of the communication tools that I've learned over the years when I talk, especially with ADD couples, around getting organized. You do this, and you leave that stuff there, and you never follow up, and you're the one who buys all the clutter, and it kind of just goes up there. So instead it goes, I need a clean space, or I need to come home and know that, there's going to be a spot on the table for me to put my plate down. This is what I need. And that just really changes things completely.
That makes sense. Yep, good suggestion. Here's a question from Alex. He says he has, or she, I'm not sure what Alex is, male or female, she has trouble moving from one task to another. So if I don't think I can finish something, I end up skimming a bunch of things and not getting anything done. How do you make yourself feel like you can move on, or you've accomplished, or you can get a chunk done without finishing it? And how do you make those transitions?
Transitions are tough for ADDers. Sometimes some ADDers, even when they walk from one room to the next, have a whole different mental attitude, or they forget everything that happened just 5 steps ago in the other room. It's really amazing the effect of transitions on ADDers. I think one of the helpful things you can do is to discover ways to figure out where you left off. And there are a lot of creative ways to do this. Obviously a very simple, low-tech way to figure out where you left off with doing, say, the laundry is to bring an artifact with you. Bring a piece of the laundry with you when you transition to the next task, whether that's a washcloth or a sock or whatever it is. Just grab an artifact that will tactily remind you of where you left off. You can also just leave yourself a note, with an arrow on it, where you're reading something and you have to get back to it. If you're doing the mail, you're opening up the mail and you get distracted and you're off on doing another task, bring an envelope with you. You can put a Post-it note, you can put a blank Post-it note in the palm of your hand, and it will still act as a reminder, kind of like the old-fashioned rubber band around your finger. It doesn't even have to say what you forgot. Often it's enough of a tickler. So those kinds of reminders, and also where you left off with an artifact, is really pretty potent.
That's a really good suggestion. Yeah, absolutely. How does procrastination fit into this, getting things done and meeting your goals?
Oh boy, procrastination's a tough one. There's so much you get out of procrastinating. It's hard to argue with. It's really hard to argue with, because you really do get a great deal out of it. And so that's where I would start if I was someone who chronically procrastinated, is first figure out what you get out of it and see if you can substitute something that's healthier. Because procrastination in the short term is okay, but procrastination in the long term is nothing but stress. And it takes its toll on your body and your mind and, your heart and your brain and your nerves and all kinds of things. So see what you get out of it and try to substitute something healthier.
That's interesting. Victoria says, I over-communicate. I love talking to people, and I lose hours chatting to people even when I have terrible deadlines. I have to relate to everybody. This is killing me and keeping me from meeting my goals. What should I do? That's a tough one.
Well, it's hard. I think I would remind her the saturation point of most individual people is much lower than her own. That, average folks who are not ADD don't really absorb as much as some ADDers can absorb. In terms of speaking a lot and talking a lot and communicating everything that comes into your head without any screens and without any filters and, just spilling it all out there. The recipient, it's burdensome for us. It's harder for us to take it in, and we don't want to be rude or inconsiderate and cut someone off, but we don't have the capacity to bring that in. So here's what I like to tell my ADD clients who are talkers to do, is to make your most salient point first and then elaborate on it. rather than elaborating and then trying to circle back around to your point. So say the one or two most meaningful things first when you're in a conversation with someone, and then begin the elaboration. One of the things that's hard for ADDers is to read the body language of the recipient. And you can learn to be more sensitive to that and better at that. There are, I can't teach you that, but there are experts who can, ways to read people's body language where you know that you've gone over and you need to say things like, well, that's about all I want to say right now. What do you think? And turn it back into a dialogue, which is what most people want. They want a conversation.
Okay, that's great. Angie said to tell everyone that A+ Calendar is a great calendar task app. She recommends it. It displays your tasks on your calendar on the day you designate with a little box for checking it off, and she likes it because you can see it after you've done it. It doesn't disappear. So thanks, Angie, for that. Judith, we're out of time. Thank you so much, as always. You're incredibly helpful. And
thanks.
Just so calm and orderly. It's just reassuring just to listen to you.
Thanks for inviting me. I hope to do another one in the future.
Thank you all for taking part. Thanks so much, Judith. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
For more Attitude Podcast and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.